Mr. Eric Fortenberry. How are you?
Doing good. How are you, Dom?
I'm good. I'm good. It's good to be on with you again.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. You and I met in the most convoluted but modern way, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you went to join the contractor strategy group on Facebook. I saw your name and I thought, no, I better talk to this guy before I let him in. He looks shady. And then I called your office and I talked to one of your assistants or something. I'm like, hey, I'm from this Facebook group, and I'm sure you're thinking, oh my God, some crackpot from Facebook group is calling me. And
Yeah, no, but we got connected, so I guess it worked.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're going to get into your background in a bit here, but of course, it includes construction, and I'm so excited to have you on as a guest. Actually, let me throw it to you, Eric. Eric, who the heck are you, and how is it you come to be speaking to this worldwide group of business owners and entrepreneurs in the construction space?
Sure, appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, this is JobTread's my third company. So I've actually right out of University of Texas at Austin, I went and I worked at a boutique investment bank. Where we help kind of buy and sell companies, raise money for companies. It was kind of shortly, very short tenure there, but I ended up starting my first online software as a service business where we sold software to colleges and universities. Long story short, we sold it to about 650 universities in 13 countries. We had over 20 million users on our web application when we got acquired by a private equity firm, and kind of went through that whole process of it being your company to now I got other owners and bosses and things, and is basically kind of after that. Though I was just kind of hanging out, and I had a buddy of mine here in Dallas who asked me if I'd come over and kind of help him with his business. He was running a general contracting firm here, and they were just sort of struggling to grow the business, and kind of having a lot of the challenges that I've seen talked about, kind of in your group and other groups online. It's they just kind of really sort of hit that ceiling of, okay, how do we get to the next level?
Yeah.
And I figure I'd just kind of help him look at some software. It was kind of my first deep dive into the construction software space, and we kind of looked at all the the predominant players out there, and at the end of the day, though, I struggled to make a recommendation on which one they should implement.
Which software you mean? Which software they needed internally for operations? Oh yeah,
exactly. And I felt like it was either really expensive or I could tell it was pretty antiquated stuff. And started 10 to 15 years ago, and I was really struggling to make a recommendation, and they asked me, they're like, can you just build us something? They knew I had gotten a master's in software engineering and had software experience. Like, well, I don't know. I don't necessarily want to create another,
do that again
application there. And they kept pushing me though. And so I said, all right, well, my one condition is I take over as CEO and I'll give you 1 year, and, we'll right the ship. We'll get the processes, and the tools in place, get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and we'll figure out how to kind of get this, business back on track and to the next level. And, so, ultimately in that year, ended up building out the first version of what is now JobTread, to kind of help scale the business and focus on everything from estimating, through to managing the subs and the work and the crews.
Interesting.
Invoicing.
So, let me just summarize this for a second. So you're in university, you start a company, and then you sell it, and then you get into construction. And then while you're in construction, a GC, you decide to start another software company. Because wow. So what kind of GC was it? What were you guys building?
So they were primarily focused on commercial, just did a lot of kind of very, very turnkey kind of, interior finish out, a lot of painting, kind of fencing, gates. One of our biggest customers, Public Storage, worked for the Bass Pro Shop.
Okay. That's fun.
Like that. Yeah.
That's fun. When you said Public Storage, I'm like, okay, now we have to install 1,000 steel roller doors.
Yep.
And then Bass Pro Shop, I'm like, oh, did you get to do the aquarium?
More so a lot of the exterior type stuff, but
like the siding and the soffits and stuff like that.
And even, the parking lots, the concrete type work often they needed to have done. Right. Even landscaping, irrigation. We really were a turnkey, kind of whatever they needed. We were able to, basically find, subcontractors that we'd send out there and, get the job done for them.
Well, I'm glad you have that kind of experience. So you're not here saying, I made software. You're saying we had problems. And so we created
Yep.
And obviously today's not to talk about the software, but I love the fact that you came into a business like a lot of other people have. Well, truthfully, a lot of people who listen to the show started it, or they have a partner, or maybe they
Yep.
took over for a family member from a
Yep.
family member. But either way, you come to it with your hands. Like you were
Yep.
running the company and said, we have problems. Let's go fix it. Some of them with software.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity to just sort of be thrown into a business that had a lot of challenges. And I mean, and they weren't, it wasn't huge. It wasn't small. I mean, we're doing about 5 million in revenue when I walked in, and had about, 10 employees, and then all of the, the work was 1099 subcontractors. And I mean, we grew them from 5 to 8 million in sales that year, and we increased their gross profit by 43% by implementing these, kind of solutions that I built out. And it was at the end of that year, I was like, all right, well, this is, this has been great. I've learned a lot, by being able to have this experience, but, kind of too good to leave sitting here with just this one company. And so it was at that point that I left and founded JobTread, and recruited some of my former software developers from my last company. And, I guess since that was 2019, we've been kind of building and actively working on it. And I mean, we've had, several kind of customers and last year that were kind of the closed, beta group, but then this year we opened it up, and
Nice.
it's really taken off. So,
well, today, actually, I really want to dig into some of your observations, and I think they'll be interesting because you're a very systematic and process driven guy, I'd imagine. Yep. Right. Yep. So what was your degree in?
My undergrad was finance and accounting, and then I ended up getting a master's in software engineering.
Wow. Very, very interesting. Okay. So you are systems and process driven, very logical.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting hearing your thoughts on this. And so for everybody listening, by the way, it's a video as well. You can see it on YouTube. You can see our smiling faces. But as an audio, we're going to go through this. I understand you have a couple of points, some observations that you've had on why am I busy, but losing money?
Exactly. Yep. So I've kind of come up with, sort of eight points that, that we can go through. And
Perfect.
It's been some good reflection, and I kind of learned these things the hard way, while deep in it. And so it's always nice to be able to kind of reflect back, and you got the hindsight of 2020 hindsight there. But I mean, I think probably just to jump right in there. I mean, the first one that that I came up with was just that, like, we weren't organized. So when I first stepped in, I realized that, like, we weren't tracking all of the right information. We didn't have the right KPIs, the key performance indicators to be focusing on, and so, like, I very quickly learned that, like, you have to know your numbers, and you have to understand what is going to drive profitability for the business, and make sure that you're focusing on those things and the right, the right metrics that, that are going to ultimately lead to, successful jobs and outcomes and profit. So,
I love it.
For example, like, not understanding, the types of customers, that are going to, be the most profitable, or the types of jobs that are going to be the most profitable for you could lead to wasting so much time and money.
Everybody listening to this show thinks that you might be my cousin saying, Dom just paid Eric to come on here and say the same things he says. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And one of the problems is, and I don't mean to offend you, but for a lot of people, that stuff's boring. Like tracking numbers, it's like, oh, you're killing me. But so first, I'll agree, it can be boring. I'm not a numbers guy. I like the patterns in the numbers. I like to see, I learn more when it's a graph. I can't see a grid of numbers, but if I see graphs and charts, I'm like, yeah, that's a problem, or that's good, whatever it is. Yeah.
That's exactly what I did. Is I took all this data and, tried to kind of derive, where our profitability was. And so, I started kind of slicing the data by, type of customer or by type of job.
Right.
I ended up finding that, when we did work for this one particular customer in this one particular location, and it was a fencing job, we were losing money. We literally paid the customer to install the fence.
Oh, geez.
And my mind almost exploded. I was like, whoa, hold on, time out. We're like, this has to, stop. And we had to kind of get in there and understand why was that happening. And ultimately we were misbidding, the cost of the materials. Like, we just nobody had updated it, and the salesman just had very outdated numbers, and, it led to losing money.
Well, and what a big problem today, Eric, isn't it? When we've got material prices going up. If you're doing extruded aluminum fencing right now, prices are going through the roof.
Yep.
And one little, we on the show or in my coaching, I call it challenging our estimating assumptions. And one mistake in the math, one little mistake on a percentage calculation or a product cost Yeah. Anyways, I don't want to hold you up. So that was number one, is not organized.
Yep.
We don't have our KPIs. We don't have our metrics. I love it.
Yep. So I'd say number two is really just like, it's very easy to misbid the job by not properly budgeting the job cost before calculating the sales price. And so, again, the situation I walked into, a couple of the guys there had, they've been doing construction for 20, 30 years. They could look at a job and, pretty much just pull out of thin air, a rough estimate of what that job would cost. And, for the most part, maybe they're, 10, 20% within, within the range. But like at the end of the day, when they sold that job, without having the underlying details, and they turned it over to the project manager and said, all right, now go get us our 30% profit margin. Project manager's like, how in the world did you come up with that? And then when, things arise that like weren't taken into account, oh, well, that wasn't included. And so now, I mean, are we in a scope creep situation, or do we have to, eat that because we omitted
change orders, everything? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, kind of one of the big things that, I implemented and realized that like we needed to require all the salespeople to build out a detailed budget of what this job will cost before calculating the sales price and before giving that estimate to the customer. And so, forcing that and having that process in place to make sure that we had every single thing in there, it really like that drastically increased our chance of being profitable in the job.
Can I interrupt with a question here?
Yeah.
Are you guys in this GC company, are you responding to bid requests, or are you going out and generating business? Like you walked up to a commercial tenant saying, hey, I notice you need a fence. Can we bid on that? Can we give you a price? Like, how are you guys getting that work?
We did respond to some, kind of like the bid networks and things like that. For the most part, though, like we found that to be a lot more challenging because it was a whole lot more competition, and so, a published bid from a, municipality or something like that, just, those often, had really tight margins and a lot of competition on them. And so our pretty, big focus was like, we wanted to go find new customers to bring in, but we also really focused on, the recurring customers and the repeat business. When selling to commercial, they often have many, locations that we could go and kind of do work at. And so it was always establishing that, that key relationship with one person, but then being able to kind of, get introduced to the other branch managers, the other property, facility owners and managers that could sort of bring us additional business. And so a lot of it was repeat business.
But repeat business at the customer level, not necessarily doing their fence, fixing their fence, doing their fence, fixing their fence. It was doing a fence at this location for one type of customer,
and painting it and then installing some door, it's
Yeah.
constantly kind of going back in there because you don't have to get everything into one job all at once. We found that was a lot easier to manage, kind of smaller projects. And then they could also, put that into their budget because they have kind of monthly,
they have operating
quarterly
budgets too.
CapEx that they can spend.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for that. Because people listening, everybody's got a different type of business or style of business. Some people listening just deal with HOAs, and some people don't want to do HOAs. Some people do commercial versus residential. Some do remodeling, some do demolition. But all of us should take away the message, find a way to get that recurring customer. That recurring revenue is such an important thing.
Well, and I think too, like even with like, on the residential side, like making sure that you've clearly defined the scope of work, so that you're setting that expectation for the customer too, of what exactly will be done and what you're expecting to be compensated for. And if you, like so many times, though, if you don't clearly outline that, then it might've been the customer's expectation that you're also going to do X, Y, and Z, but you're not thinking you're going to, and then you get into a dispute, where it could ultimately end up, well, are we going to, completely throw the job out now? Are we going to cancel midway? Like, and that's where it's just, you have to budget out exactly what is going to be done and give that detailed scope of work, before you enter into the, start the job.
Yeah. All right. So we're number one, not organized for KPIs. Number two, my bids are not using budgets before estimating. What's number three?
Yeah, so it's also related to kind of the budgeting and pricing, but just the using markup instead of margin. This took me a long time to figure out why this is happening at the GC, where I found that like this a couple of the sales guys we're always kind of coming fairly close to the profit margin that they set out to hit, and then there was this other group that was always way under, and for the longest time I was thinking, well, maybe it's just in the right position for them. But when I really dug into it and I sat down and I started kind of watching them do it, I realized that they were calculating the sales price based on margin or based on markup instead of using margin. And so we immediately corrected that and got them to use margin so that we knew that the price would yield our target profit margin instead of, having this kind of inflated expectation that they thought that they were going to get a 30% profit margin, but they marked it up 30%. And then we only, by default, we're only going to get a 23% profit margin.
Yeah.
And so they were shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah. And that's a difficult piece of math for people to understand. Eric, I hate to do this, but can I remind people, on the Profit Tool Belt website, there is a markup versus margin calculator and a spreadsheet. So go ahead and download it there, because what Eric's talking about here is the truth. If I try to mark it, if I try to mark up by 30%, my margin's only in the 20s. You have to see the math to understand it, but you're shooting yourself in the foot, even though it's the topic of today's show. Why am I busy but losing money?
Yeah.
Because one little number, one tiny assumption is wrong, and mistakes we make in estimating echo through the whole company, and that echo lands under your Christmas tree when you don't have the right gifts enough. That's where, as a parent, you're trying to bring money home to the family, and you're looking at it going, why am I working this hard? Something's wrong. You might have hit one of the biggest golden spikes of the whole thing. Thank you.
Yeah. I think too, by using margin, you can set, a business goal of what your target profit margin is. And then you can, track the progress of the job in real time towards that profit goal, and you can measure your success by comparing your actual profit margin to your target profit margin, when the project's done. A lot of people feel like it's easier to use markup, to calculate the price.
Yeah.
And they think that, sometimes for whatever reason, it's
3 times cost. It's easier
to the customer.
Yeah.
But markup doesn't follow you throughout the project and the financial life cycle. And, it's not a great tool to be able to project, your gross profit from a job.
Yeah. What happens, I think, a lot, and because I talk to people about this all the time, they're like, that's how my old boss did it. Just took costs times 3. And then they'll say, sometimes I go 3.5. Okay. But so you're doing a good job. You're thinking about costs plus, but it's margin, not markup. And that little difference makes all the difference.
Yeah. The larger, kind of your markup or your margin that you're getting, the bigger the delta is between the two.
Yeah. All right, good. What's point number 4?
Number 4 is really just, when you fail to deliver high quality work, the first time around, it can lead to you having to send back out your crews, where you're now having to pay them additional work to go out there, get it done, the first time, and I found that this challenge, especially for us, because, when I first stepped in, we were doing maybe about, 15 to 20 concurrent jobs at a time. And, we needed to be able to take on more and more concurrent jobs. But as you do that, it becomes harder to, really kind of keep a handle on every single job and be able to oversee and manage all the details of the job. Yeah. And so, it's very important, again, to provide very detailed work orders to your subs and to your crews, to make sure that, you've set the right expectations for them. We started requiring them to also sign off on all of that, so that they are, acknowledging that they understand what is expected of them in order to get paid, and how much they will get paid as well, because if we have to send them back out, that shouldn't be on us. If they didn't complete an expectation or they didn't do something correctly, then again, that's ultimately going to come right out of our profit if we're having to pay them more. And so by having a fixed price, a guaranteed, contract for every single job with every single worker or sub, then if they don't do something correctly, it's on them. And in order for them to get paid, they have to get out and actually complete the work as we laid out in the work order. In the scope work. Yeah. As we've talked about on this show a number of times, if you have one person who actually works for you and you send one person in one truck out for 1 hour to Home Depot or wherever you are to get just one hinge, it's $600. Yep. And like that. That brings up an interesting story too. So we, when I first stepped in, we were compensating our subs by time and material, so we were paying them hourly to go get the job done. And again, I saw some crews were a lot faster at completing the work and some were a lot slower, and so some people work slower, but have higher quality and more detail. Well, I ended up actually following around a couple crews one day, and I found that this one crew, they had 3 workers. They literally went to Home Depot, spent 3 hours, like literally 3 hours in Home Depot, and I have no idea what they were doing. Maybe
so. You were actually in a car watching this crew.
You know, I followed them.
We're going to call that a
from the
secret
shop.
shopper, Eric. It's not stalking if it's for work. It's
Yeah,
it's called a secret shopper.
It's not something, you know, I want to like necessarily broadcast, but like, again, I was trying to understand, how could we be paying this crew so much more, but they delivered nothing more than this other crew who could do it in a fraction of the time. And again, I found that like we had misaligned incentives. We were compensating these guys by the hour. So they were incentivized to drag this job
more
out.
hours. Yeah.
And that's why we ended up switching to, here is a, you know, guaranteed price, a fixed bid to do this work. And if you tell me it'll take 5 days and you do it in 3, awesome. More power to you. That's on you.
Bonus to you. Yeah.
Yeah. If it takes you 7 days, then, you know, well, that's also on you. And, you know, you can't move on to the next job until you get it done. You're not going to get paid anymore. And so now we were aligned. And then that also let me take that price that they quoted me. I could take that, add my margin, send it off to the customer. And now everyone is aligned with, you know, how we're going to get this done. And so, you know, it is a challenge to make sure that, you know, you've got the right incentives in place and you're compensating people the right way. You know, now with all that to be said, some work like, you know, on-demand service work. Yeah. Like, you know, if our customer calls us and like, hey, the building is flooding, they don't want us to sit there and, you know, build out a full estimate and yada, yada. Like in those situations, sure, they're going to pay us an agreed upon, you know, rate for that work. And that's totally fine. And they understand too, you know, there's a huge premium anyways on that because it's on demand. But, you know, I think for more fixed price jobs, it's important to make sure that you've got the right setup throughout.
Did you get pushback from the subs on that, on saying we're going to go to fixed price?
You know, it kind of made some of them sort of scratch their head a little bit, but at the end of the day, they actually found that it was better because when I asked the subs, well, why are you guys frustrated with the project manager, with the salesperson, or why aren't you getting it done, you know, like faster or, you know, on time and on budget? And they said, you know, the biggest feedback I got was, well, I showed up to the job site, but the project manager never sent me the plans, the specs. I didn't know the scope of work. It was very unclear. They were just told, go to this job site and, you know, kind of given maybe a high level description. And so by forcing the project managers to put together a written, you know, scope of work for that sub, they now had all of the details going into it. And they were also incentivized to make sure they knew exactly what needed to be done before they showed up, because now they're on their clock. Now they're wasting their time and they're not going to get paid anymore for it.
So you lined up incentives with outcomes. That's the fancy words, right? We lined up incentives, like how we're going to pay you, how we're going to recognize you with what we actually want done.
Exactly.
So you're right. If I pay somebody by the hour to sweep my shop, they don't care how long it takes to sweep the shop. They care how much they get paid. But if I say to you, you're going to get $100 to sweep the shop, and I expect all the corners cleaned, the garbage is emptied, and the list, then you're going to get the work you want in the time that they want, and they're going to work towards being as efficient as possible to do that. I know I used cleaning up the shop, but simple job example, right?
Yep. You know, and I think kind of one last point on this before we move on is that, you know, the other big thing that we did was we started requiring at the end of every single day or before the sub left the job site, they were required, if they wanted to be paid for that day, they're required to send photos or videos of all of the work that they completed or the current status. Show me just, you know, even if it's not completed, I want to see a progress update.
Yeah. I want to see the post holes dug. Whatever
exactly.
it is.
So now, you know, I can put eyes on the job site without having to physically go to every single job site. I can see an update of where we're at. And that gave me the opportunity to spot errors or issues before we get all the way to the end. And then I hear it from the customer or when I actually do go walk the job. You know, it was just such a great, you know, just change of pace. And that also, you know, again, it forced more accountability on the subs to want to, you know, actually deliver quality work because they knew I was going to see it and I was going to see it in real time instead of, you know, at the end of, you know, the job. I could see at the end of every day, what did they accomplish?
You're making me smile because it sounds like you're running the construction company like a business. Hold on. This is crazy talk, Dom. So I want to make sure I capture point number 4 properly. What is point number 4? Because I started with rework, and then I ended up with lining up initiatives and outcomes.
I mean, it's delivering quality work.
Okay.
And so in order to do that, you have to be able to, stay up to date with everything that's happening, but you also have to adequately, incentivize and reward and compensate for quality work. If you deliver shoddy work, you don't get paid.
Yeah.
It's that simple. I don't care how many hours it takes you to do subpar work. I'm not paying for subpar work. I'm paying for quality work that the customer is going to be satisfied with and is going to pay me for.
That's right. Okay. Spoken like a GC. If anybody had any doubts, they're gone now. Okay. Number 5.
So number 5, and again, this is another real world, situation I walked into. You have to collect your accounts receivable. It's one thing to send an invoice to the customer, but it's a whole nother thing to actually get paid. So when I walked into this GC, we essentially had hundreds of thousands of dollars in AR. Oh. And, the issue was that, basically the project manager said, hey, accounts receivable, accounting office, like, can you guys here just send this invoice? And so they would send the invoice, now they're also very disconnected from the job. So sometimes the invoices were, had errors, weren't, correct, didn't have the right documentation, the way the customer wanted it. But the bigger issue was often they would send it, and then that was the end of it. The project manager never knew whether we collected that invoice or not. The accounting office never followed up on that invoice or not. As a business owner, I had no visibility into it unless I actually logged into the QuickBooks every single day. Yeah. And so that's where, I really realized, you have to follow up and you have to get paid. Like, you've earned the work, you've earned that money. But if you don't go collect it every single day that goes by, the value of that AR is just drastically decreasing to the point where, if this goes on for months and literally we had outstanding AR that was over a year old, like, you just have to write it off. Yeah. And so, like, all of that effort and all of that work just got flushed down the drain. And I think it's the most important thing is that you focus on your AR. And, that's you have to set the expectation to the customer up front as well. What you're expecting them to pay and when. Yeah. Payment schedules are a great tool for that. But make sure that they know you're going to send them, maybe it's an upfront deposit, and then maybe, 50% completion. We're going to invoice you again. And then at the end, here's the final invoice, like
dates and gates.
Set that.
You have to set the dates and the gates. Yeah. What are we going to do? What are you going to do? It's interesting. I think AR in itself, accounts receivable, getting paid is extremely important because we're doing the work and we still don't have the money yet. But what you just said there, which I really like, is we have to set the expectations up front. If somebody listening to this has an accounts receivable problem right now, I would bet you dollars to donuts you have a marketing and a signing the agreement problem that has to be fixed before you'll ever fix the accounts receivable problem. Because if there's not clarity, if, like you said, if I'm not clear with the person that when we start the job, we get X, when we get to this point, we get another X, when we do this, we get some more money. If that's not clear, customer's not going to pay. You wouldn't pay somebody else if they weren't clear. You'd be the first one to say, yeah, we're not going to pay that yet. Exactly. Well, you got to be the squeaky wheel. You have to be very detailed. You have to follow up because your money's not important. Nope. Their money's important until you make it important.
And Dom, what was even worse to compound the issue was instead of following up on AR, they were going back to the bank and they kept taking additional loans.
Because GC company you took over.
Yeah. They basically accrued, hundreds of thousands of dollars now in debt, and they used their AR, as collateral, but then again, when you have to write off the AR, okay, well now it's twice as worse because now you owe that money back to the bank and you're not even going to ever collect it. So it's just like, it's a very stressful. Downward spiral that you just can't get into.
Accounts receivable can be very stressful to people. And we have to remember that most people are just really good at trades. They're really, really good at being a carpenter or a mason or electrician. And so they get into the trades, right?
Yep.
But it doesn't mean that they decided they were going to be a business person. That's what this podcast is about. And that's why I look for guests like you who've got great insights. But we're all learning as we go. So fix these little things. I mean, you've got 8 points. We're only through 5 of them, and it's been a great interview already. But fix these little things as you go, and you're going to constantly get better. The hard part is that when you're in traffic and you look at the guy in the van next to you who looks exactly the same, he's not changing anything. In 20 years from now, he's going to be in the same place, and you're going to be further ahead if you make these little changes. All right, sir. So we have to collect AR was number 5.
So number 6 is on the other the other side of that token, is about negotiating advantageous payment terms. So this is both with your subs and with your suppliers. Again, you have to do this up front, but so many people just accept whatever payment terms, whether it's, net 15, net 30, whatever it may be, they just sort of accept it. And they don't realize that like you can negotiate that. Everything in this world is negotiable. And if you don't ask, you're never going to get the sale. And so, ultimately your goal is to stretch out your payables as long as you can, and that really does a couple different things. I mean, one, it gives you more opportunity to collect your receivables before paying, for the materials or paying, for the labor. But it also gives you an opportunity to make sure that the job was completed satisfactory. And, that you can, if you pay your subs for that job before the customer has signed off on it and before they have sent you your check and your money, then you're back in that same issue of, well, wait, if something wasn't done right, but I've already paid my guy, I have no leverage to get him to go back out and complete it. You have to keep some leverage so that you can get them to get back out there and finish the job, do it correctly, so that you can get paid.
All right. So negotiate advantageous payment terms. I guess your point there is everything's open for discussion, but make sure you discuss it up front.
And you can, again, like you can get, accounts set up with almost every national supplier, and you just have to go in there and set that up. And then they always have the ability to give you, instead of net 30, net 45 or net 60, and whatever pitch you give them, hey, we're a small business, or, hey, we just, this will really help us, like, or we'll bring all of our purchasing to you. Like they absolutely have the ability to negotiate and to give you that leniency. And so all you got to do is ask for it, and it'll make a tremendous impact on your cash flow. I have
actually a really interesting story that goes to asking, just in the theme of asking. So a lot of the guys that listen to this show, a lot of the companies are in the commercial space. And so they'll win a job today, but it's not going to start for 6-8 months. Well, in the last little while, we've seen what's happened to material prices. Just the price of what does a 2x4 go for in Austin right now? $12.
Twice is what it was, 2 months ago. I mean, luckily it's coming back down, but
I know, but for a while there it was crazy. And I remember, well, I don't want to be saying how old I am, but 2x4s used to be under $1, and now it's just crazy. So what happened was one of my clients had a job that was going to start in a little while, and they went to the GC. This is a big tower type building, and they said, we can't guarantee that you're going to have the products that you specified by the architect by the time this job starts. Would you like to buy it all now? We'll store it for you. Of course, we'll have to charge for that storage, but you'll get consistent product and guaranteed product when the time comes. And without hesitation, they just said, So they've it's all paid for, everything. Now they've got a storage, challenge, but they can get through that by charging properly. But it goes to the same thing. Just ask. Don't say that this is the problem that everybody has and we can't find a way around it. Ask differently. How can we solve that challenge? Love it.
All right. Number 7.
Yes, sir.
It's something you already alluded to earlier, but you got to build the right team. Like if everyone's heard the saying, hire slowly, fire quickly, and I'm a huge believer of getting the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and then figuring out how and where to drive together. When you've assembled the right team, your chances for success are exponentially greater, and you can't grow your business alone. Like you need to have, key people around you that are going to complement your skill sets. In order to be a successful contractor, you don't have to be a business person or have a business degree, but you have to have somebody on your team who can complement you and can focus on the business side. If you're on the product side, fine, but make sure that you have ways in your team's capacity to also be successful at the business side, and so it's,
so like a good bookkeeper, a good accountant,
Yep.
An excellent estimator, right?
Yep.
Just because you're the business owner doesn't mean you can't be on the tools. If you still want to be on the tools, have somebody who's in the office looking after estimating,
Yep.
bookkeeping, all those things.
And maybe you love sales and you're great at it and you want to focus on sales. Or if you don't, then you need to make sure you have someone that is focused on sales.
Right.
You have to continually fill that pipeline and have that, the top of the funnel has to keep getting filled. And if you sell a job and you go focus on running it, and then when you're done, you got nothing else right behind it. Well, now you're going to have, this delay of work. And
this starvation cycle. Yeah. You've got work,
Exactly.
You don't have work. You've got work, you don't have work.
Yep. And I think too, whether they're employees or, your workers and you subcontractors, like you have to make sure that you always have high quality, high performers on your team that are going to represent your company and your brand, and that are going to result in a very positive customer experience. Because if you don't have those people and you're using the wrong people, then it's ultimately going to cost you a whole lot more in the long run. And it could tarnish your reputation, in fact, and so I see a lot of people talking about, well, how do I address this situation? Or I got this sub who never shows up on time, yada, yada. Like you have to promptly address issues. Like there will be issues with everyone. I mean, just it happens, but you have to promptly address that, and you have to document that and talk to them. Like, don't just, hold it in and get all upset about it. Like have those hard conversations, because ultimately those are growing opportunities. Those are learning opportunities. Those are development opportunities, both for you as a manager, as well as for them as a worker, as an employee, to continually improve. And so as long as people are, continually growing and getting better and better, your team is always getting stronger and stronger. But if you don't, if you can't, build the right team, then, again, you're spinning cycles and wasting time and money.
Yeah, I love it. So this has come up so much in the last couple of weeks, even for me and the companies I work with, is have the tough conversation, but it doesn't have to be, I don't want to say negative, but let's say that you made a mistake and you're the person let's keep using fence installs. And one of the panels went in crooked because the post didn't get put in plumb, square, and level. Well, the fact is that fence isn't straight because that post didn't go in plumb, square, and level. So I'm not accusing you of anything. It's a factual observation. This post didn't go in plumb, square, and level. Now the fence is crooked and now the customer's not happy. We have to go back and fix it. But we have to have that conversation. It can't all just be, yay, team, we can get through anything if we have a positive attitude. Well, a positive attitude is great. I know we can fix that post, but we have to be realistic. It went in crooked. Yep. And so it's okay to have that tough, I'm calling that a tough conversation. There's 1,000 times tougher, as you probably see. Yeah. But that's a conversation that we've got to have, right?
And it's just addressing things as they come up. Don't let it bottle up and you hold it all in, because ultimately, you're going to end up just exploding. And you're not going to handle it in the appropriate way. It's just, address things when they come up. I mean, that's the responsibility of being a business owner, a manager of people. You got to just be able to do that. And it's very hard at first, but as you practice and you do it more and more, then it gets easier. And again, at the end of the day, though, like if you give someone a couple chances, like you can't just keep letting them do the same thing if they're not fixing the issue. Or, your customers aren't satisfied, you're not satisfied, then again, you got to cut the ties and, go find somebody else who will do the job right.
Yeah. All right. Number eight.
This brings us kind of to my final, conclusion here is that, once you've built the right team, you have to equip them with the right tools and the right processes to make sure that they're set up for success. It takes a tremendous amount of work to successfully build and manage a contracting business, so make sure that, you've given your people what they need to be successful and to support them and to guide that growth. There's so many reasons, that you can have poor processes that are going to, basically just result in poor results.
Right.
And, if you don't address those and actually look and seek out the inefficiencies, find the bottlenecks in everything, and again, when I went into the GC, I started on the estimating, the sales side, and then we got into the project management and managing the subs and the work. And then we focused on the accounting and the AR and AP. You have to spend time looking at your processes to find the inefficiencies and sometimes even if you're not in the weeds and the details of the day-to-day work, just all you got to do is start asking your people. Go talk to them about, hey, tell me about what's your day like? I mean, what things are taking you forever to do, and what can we do to make that easier, or make sure that you're getting your job done, without having to spend a bunch of time that might not be the best use of your time. In today's day and age, like you have to leverage technology that can create those efficiencies, that can minimize your errors, and that can lead to the increased profitability. And ultimately, like that's how you can grow your business.
Yeah. That's so good. It's interesting that you have 8 points here inside the question, why am I busy but losing money? Because I talk about there's 8 profit leaks in a business, a construction business. And what you talked about here and what I talk about line up, we use different words, but they're really the same rocks that you go look under and over.
Yeah.
Eric, this has been great. I mean, it's interesting that, you're a young guy, but you've already taken so much wisdom out of the business, out of the GC business, the construction business, and then you created systems for it, as a software. The simple systems, very, very simple, uncomplicated systems is always the key. Keeping it clean, keeping it simple, staying consistent, right? If you look at your favorite football team, it's the same thing. They probably run some simple plays really, really, really well. Every once in a while they get fancy and, we all go mad in the stands for sure.
Yeah.
But they do the basics really well. And that creates a winning team. It's the same thing you're talking about here.
Sure.
Yeah. So good. Where do we find you in this big wide world? If somebody has more questions for you, if they disagree, if they want to know more, how do we find Eric Fortenberry?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can find me all over, the social media and the web, but we'd certainly love for everyone to, go check out our website, jobtread.com. We've also set up a special page that'll have, kind of the summarized kind of key takeaways from this discussion here. So jobtread.com/profit tool belt. And, you'll be able to learn a whole lot more about JobTread. You can schedule a demo there. You can, kind of download this white paper. But again, I mean, we'd love to work with, all big and small businesses, whether you're a home builder, a remodeler, a general contractor, individual trade. There's all sorts of information that you can find out about the, basically the system that I built while running a GC, but have now turned around and have made available to all contractors.
Yeah. I like the fact that today you just talked about it very factually. We didn't talk about your software business at all. It's just like, here's observations, here's the problems I had, but then here's what I did to go fix it.
Yep.
There's another place people can see you because it's how you and I first met. You're in the Facebook group called Contractor Strategy Group. So I imagine if somebody messages you in there, you guys can talk or side PM each other, whatever. I can't even follow how Facebook works anymore. Just find each other.
Yep,
have your discussions. Yeah.
And I'm all about, like, I mean, I enjoy, being able to help other entrepreneurs and business owners succeed. It's just, I spend a significant amount of my time every day talking to business owners, and so I'm happy to connect with anyone, whether, it's on the Facebook group, or even, if you want to schedule a time to, hop on a phone call or hop on a Zoom with me, like I'm all about it. Cause I believe, if you give back and you help others, in turn, it'll come back around. And, it's awesome to see, kind of, small businesses be able to take those next steps and grow. And, to be part of it is very rewarding in and of itself. And, I know I've had mentors along the way and people that have helped me. So, I want to turn around and, hopefully inspire, as well as give you some tactical, tools and strategies that you can implement in your business to be successful as well.
Great. Well, thanks, Eric. And so one more time, we go to jobtread.com/profit tool belt. And that's where you've got these 8 points as a download or something.
All one word, profit tool belt. And that'll get you access to these resources.
Fantastic. Eric, so good to have you on the show. Thank you for sharing these. I took a ton of notes. I'm not used to writing, as much as I used to. Now I'm a typer, but I took a ton here, and I like your stories that go along with it. Thank you so much.
Hey, well, I appreciate you having me on here, and I appreciate what you're doing too to kind of just help contractors be able to grow their business, be more successful. I know you've been very successful in your career as well, so it's very much appreciated. To have people out there doing what you do.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, Eric. Have a great day. We'll talk to you again.
All right. See you, Dom.
Bye-bye.
Bye.